brought to you by Magna. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, April 10th, 2025, and I've got Stephen Jenkins here of Magna. Hi, Stephen, how are you?
Hi, Miriam. Thanks for having me on the show. Good to be here. Thanks. All good.
Well, thanks for coming on. Folks, this is my first guest of the week. I have Austin Evans joining me later on for the news and reviews, so stay tuned for that. Stephen, Magna is a big part of the automotive industry, and I'm really glad to have you on. You recently announced a partnership with NVIDIA, and I want to speak with you about that. But first of all, give us a bit of context of what you do at Magna, where Magna is in the industry as a supplier to OEMs, to car manufacturers. Give us a bit of an intro and a quick, idea of where you stand in the entire software world of software-defined vehicles.
Absolutely. So Magna is quite a large company, one of the top five when it comes to contribution to the automotive industry as a tier one, doing everything from metal bending to software to domain controllers and so on. And of course, my role is more towards the ADAS piece, more towards the software piece as well. We've been doing this for a long time as a group of people that have been brought up or merged towards different constellations, and we have a lot of experience in the area. So it's one of the areas where we're expanding and reaching out, and we're growing, and it's also an area inside of Magna that is having a lot of focus.
That's fantastic. So how did this NVIDIA partnership come about? And can you tell us more about it? Obviously, in the industry, there's a lot of players in the supplier field. Everyone is trying to get on board the software-defined vehicle thing, which, makes sense. Obviously, it's pretty critical, right? But everybody's got a slightly different approach. I've seen some companies kind of dip their toes. Some of them are going full head on. But as a supplier, you're in a very unique position. So please tell me a little bit more about this NVIDIA partnership, how it came to be, what it entails.
So I would say that the area we're working in is pretty large. As you said, there's a lot of different suppliers. There's a lot of different choices, which is good. I mean, you go back a few years, there wasn't as many choices. There is a lot of different choices now. And there's different solutions for different problems as well. We should never think that different problems should be solved by the same solution every time either. So NVIDIA for us is a good way to get into the kind of the high-end domain, the mid-end domain, and making sure that we actually have something that is giving us some legs to stretch in this kind of area as well. NVIDIA has been for a very long time thinking about platform level solutions. So a lot of the software they do is really compatible across different domains, different types of technology, different types of approaches towards the consumer. And of course, they have a huge tool chain support as well. Because of that, they have all the back-end things, the data training, and they have all the even into factories and so on as well. And then of course the software play for ADAS as well. So for us, it's a really good place to really expand, and it's also a good win-win because Magna has a lot of experience with sensors and vehicles and all the things around that, and NVIDIA has all these tools and all the ability to
very
get things
complementary.
out. Very complementary, exactly. And of course, NVIDIA is pushing the boundaries of what's possible as well. They've been doing that, as I said, not just in automotive, but pretty much everywhere. So It's a really good place to be. So it doesn't mean that, we're only going to be working with them, but it's a very good place for us to be expanding our understanding and working together on something we think is a very good win-win.
My audience is very familiar with them more than they are with Magna, so that makes sense. The new Switch 2, the Nintendo game console, came out last week. It's powered by a custom NVIDIA chip. And as you said, I think NVIDIA has a lot of legs too. Like, that you can grow with them together for numerous years coming up for ADAS solutions for software-defined vehicles. So is this a partnership primarily around ADAS then, or are you looking at expanding towards, infotainment in-car? Like, that's the thing that's been happening, right? The industry has been kind of consolidating very vertically in terms of software for each individual manufacturer. And as a supplier, that's obviously a challenge. So is this right now more focused on ADAS only, or are you hoping to kind of like have that kind of, propagate into the other parts of the stuff you do?
I mean, the partnerships we try to form are not just specifically for, of course, you start off with something because you want to get, you don't want to go spread yourself too thin in the beginning, but it's not even limited to the vehicle. There's a lot of things outside of the vehicle that NVIDIA are doing as well. So, I mean, the potential is even bigger than that with Omniverse and all of the other types of things that they're doing within NVIDIA as well. But we want to start somewhere, and we're starting with ADAS because ADAS is something that is very well in line with what we're doing, what NVIDIA is doing. And so in electronics and Magna, we're really, we want to make sure we're getting somewhere very quickly. And so that's a good logical place to start. But the possibilities are, of course, growing as the domain's growing as well. As you say, there's a lot of overlap.
Understood. And tell us a little bit more in terms of what other areas Magna Electronics touches on. You don't have to necessarily name the partners because I know there are agreements there that's a little difficult, but give us an idea of what areas. Obviously, cockpit's a big deal these days. And then, the whole kind of stack of, basically how you control these zonal in microcontrollers, or rather, computers these days. Everything is consolidated into fewer and fewer computers. Is that something you're trying to offer as a solution to your partners as well, or is this something that right now is more in the future for you?
So I would actually look at it at kind of the opposite way, given the changes that have come out now. And if you look at some of the solutions that are being presented now into some of the more modern approaches, it's very difficult to actually pull those things apart now. Before, it was very easy. You had your ADAS piece, your cockpit piece, you had your braking piece, and so on and so forth, and your mapping and all those kind of things. With these newer, more modern end-to-end solutions and fully vertically integrated and all those kind of things, you actually start to see there's not a lot of difference between the way these are all configured and the way they're developed as well. So, for example, if you as a driver are using the system, you don't want to have a separate cockpit system and a separate ADAS system.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to figure out how, as a supplier, you kind of are able to verticalize yourself, as it were.
And of course, you can still do that by using building blocks. It doesn't necessarily mean, which is, I think, where a lot of the confusion comes from, is it doesn't mean you have to do everything in-house just because you want to have a vertically integrated solution. It just means you have to make sure you're thinking about it as a system level in the beginning. So I think you're for example, I don't, when I'm writing something on paper, I don't go and cut down a tree and make my own pencil. I buy the pencil and the paper, and you can still have IP and knowledge into this. And so these systems, when they're trained now, and you look at these very advanced systems, they're trained with all the data available, right? So they cover human behavior, traffic scenarios, context, large language models, everything. So the system can kind of ask the question, what am I seeing in front of me? Or you're seeing people standing by a bus stop, or you're seeing this situational, you get situational awareness into the system, right? So suddenly you start to take away these boundaries between these things. And so whether it's interacting with a cockpit system or interacting with an ADAS system or interacting with the vehicle, it doesn't make as much difference. So I would say that's what we're really going for in kind of where the performance of something like the NVIDIA chip on the scale up allows you to do things that weren't possible before.
Oh, that's great. I was actually going to ask you what your approach was on this, because I personally understand as an ex-software developer, and I've worked in this field, so I understand how you have to, if you want to be able to control everything as a manufacturer, you have to be able to change the software quickly, and you have to work with suppliers that allow you to do that. But that's really good to hear that you're enabling this right from the get-go at the building block level, because I constantly review cars where the big question I ask them is, what is you say you have OTA update on this vehicle, what can actually be OTA updated that's over the air, over the internet updates? And, then, we start getting into but you can't do this. And I'm like, well, Tesla, China, Rivian, they can do all of it. So why can't you do this? And then they tell me, because, we're still using some legacy parts that have proprietary firmware. And so, that's the challenge, right? I think is for you to create the best technology from an electronics company's perspective, but deliver that flexibility to the OEM. And I'm wondering how you've had to approach this internally. How have you, I'm sure Magna itself gets it and wants it happening, but how is it working with OEMs who are maybe more resistant to that, or, try to kind of drag them into the future, as it were?
So I would say if you go back a few years, we were limited by technology. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if it's 5 years or 10 years. It depends on what kind of, everything comes with a price point. So probably you could have sold it 10 years ago, but a ridiculous price point that no one would pay for. Now you're at a point where the price is coming to a level where it makes sense. And also all of the solution domain has come to a point where you can actually achieve it. So I think now it's limited by our own ability to manage it, right? So I think you're right. So things like, as being a software developer before, you'll know that things like how you're interacting with the software code itself, being able to share it with your partners and suppliers to be able to contribute and add value and so on and so forth, those kind of interfaces and descriptions of how things are done in the system and so on. And then how you deliver it, and not thinking about there's a one shot you deliver for an SOP and then you're done. You don't have to touch it anymore.
Forever.
It has to be forever. You have to think platforms. You have to think you have a generation 1 and a generation 2 and a generation 3, and it's over a lifespan and over multiple hardware and things like that. So it's not really I would argue that it's not a technical problem anymore. It's a sourcing problem. It's a partnership problem. It's a
mindset problem.
It's a mindset problem. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And of course, the issue is you can't change that all at once because everything is built up with that in mind. So you have to start off by chipping away at this and making sure that you get the understanding. Okay, well, when we do it this way, look at the advantages, and then you get someone will see that and say, great, let's do more of this, and then it goes a little bit faster and a little bit faster. So I think the understanding is there, definitely. The technology is ready and there. The ecosystem is not really there yet.
Okay, so that's the part that's slowing you down. Okay.
Yeah. And I think there's where we're starting to see the companies that built this from nothing have an advantage because they had nothing already there. They could start from a different starting point, right? And the companies that have been there from the long term, they have a little bit of a challenge to kind of break down those original walls of this is how we've always done it before. And that's where I think Magna's been very good, because Magna's been really trying to approach this from the perspective of we have to make a change. It's the time to make the change. Let's do it. But we're not alone. So
yeah, and I think that's the challenge, right? And you think you met it because you early on understood this. So you've now created a culture around it. So everyone's on board. So that's the first step, right? The cost, as you said, costs and technology aren't, well, costs maybe, but technology isn't the biggest problem. That's been solved. Then getting people on board internally, that's been solved. Now you're basically probably spending as much time educating your partners and your OEM, manufacturers you're working with, as much as you're solving their technical problems. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go back, 7-10 years, there was just a few people that really could feel that this was the way it was going, and now many more do. So it's of course easier for every person that gets converted to get traction. So
where do you think things are going with you and generally with supplies in the future in terms of, do you think that suppliers are diversifying because they need to meet more of that vertical pipeline from car manufacturers? Or do you feel that there's still some benefit to specialization? Obviously with software, you have a lot of freedom, when you're doing electronics and not mechanical things, you have a lot of freedom. Magna, of course, does a whole bunch of stuff, but you're Magna Electronics. So you're mostly focused on the kind of the compute and the sensors. So how do you think that's going to evolve? How do you think the suppliers what's it going to look like maybe in 10 years when every car is a software-defined vehicle, every car is an EV, every car is highly connected and highly computerized?
So this area that we're working in is just so complex that there's no way I can see that one supplier would actually be able to do everything. And I think the quicker you get to that assumption, or that that learning, the better you are at making your position clear for the future, for sure, right? And that doesn't matter if you're an OEM or a tier 1 or a tier 2. Everyone is not the best at everything. That is pretty clear. And there's normally a need to also create choice as well. So, I mean, having all your eggs in one basket isn't a good idea either. And so in my previous roles, we fought with this idea of if we're competing with our own customers, that's not good. For example, if we're trying to do something we're not good at, that's also not good. So for me, there's going to be a number of players. It has to be less than there are today, but they have to be specialized on certain areas of the problem so that you actually get the best out of them. And I've heard some very good examples where suppliers of a tool chain or an AI model or something have said, I'm really not going to grow to be 10,000 people and spread myself out, because that's not what I want to be. I want to be the best at this. And so I'm looking for people to help me take that and use it in the context of, last mile delivery or ADAS and so on. So one advantage of being in Magna is we see a lot more than just electronics. We can actually start to see the trends around everything else as well, to help us to get that kind of spreading of because a lot of the things we do can be used anywhere. It's just that we haven't done it before, right? So that's kind of where we get to. But again, I'm very mindful of the fact that someone who's been working with a problem for 20 years or 10 years or even 5 years, but they're the best in the industry, I'm not going to go and just try and say, I'm going to be better than you by tomorrow. When I've got all these other things to do, I'm going to say, let's figure out how we do this in a good way together. So in the future, I think you're talking about some more standardization around the platform, around the operating system, around, the same kind of things that we've gone through with both PC and internet and even mobile phones. And there'll be some very good players in that space. And then there'll be some very good players in some of the software functionality space. And there'll be some good players in the sensor space. And we want to be in some of these areas, but not all of them 100%, right? So that's why we partner up with big companies like NVIDIA and say, you're good at doing the chips and you have a good ecosystem, you have good tool chains and good tool sets. We think that makes sense for us. So we can focus on adding our benefits, which is where our experience comes in.
Perfect. One last question for you. You mentioned sensors. You mentioned your expertise, in many fields, but where do you think Magna's expertise is the highest? Where are you think, making a difference out there for both manufacturers and the end product for consumers?
So, I think we have a very good safety culture and also experience of that, given the background and history we're coming from. And we know a lot about how the vehicle behaves and what things work well and what things don't. And then at the same time, we also understand customers, because every customer is a little bit different. They have different requirements. Some want 5-star NCAP, some want 3-star but volume, some want very high performing modern functions that are expensive, some want just the best they can do with the money they have, and so on and so forth. So we're very good at finding those very good trade-offs and making it a safe product in a good environment that fulfills the customer requirements, and then getting it working in the car, because you shouldn't underestimate actually getting it working with all the other things in the car as well. So our experience of taking technology, developing the pieces we think we're good at developing, and then being able to say, you can do this with less sensors, or you can do this with this configuration, or you can get this performance if you add this, for example. We look a lot at different domains like nighttime and performance in rain and those kind of things, where not necessarily a tier 2 would have been thinking about or thinking about that. We can add that expertise over the 20 plus years experience we have of doing it, and then say, here's the best product for you, customer, and this is the way we would develop it and put it into the car for you.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I'm really looking forward to see what, comes down the pipe from this partnership with NVIDIA and Magna. As I said, I've always been very excited to see what Magna's up to from a distance. Obviously I can't physically touch it without necessarily knowing, since it appears in vehicles here and there, but I'm looking forward to seeing these fruits of your labor. Thanks so much for being on the show, Stephen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And great. It was really good to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
And folks, we're back with Austin Evans. Hi, Austin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm pretty awesome. There's a bunch of exciting things this week to talk about. Pixel 9a, the new Oppo Find X8 Ultra, which is their super crazy camera phone for China. They sent me one. But more importantly, you made an incredibly great video this week. And I was looking at your feed yesterday. I missed it when it was actually launched. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Plus you had Luke Mayani on the show with you.
Yep.
So tell us about this video. You decided to see if you could get the Apple lifestyle going for the price of an iPhone 16e, which is $600 for less than that. And that means everything. That kind of blew me away. I thought you were just going to do the phone and the laptop, and you did phone, laptop, watch, and iPad. Yeah. And you almost did the earbuds too, the AirPods.
I give you an exclusive on that one because I did get them. They just didn't show up for the video.
Oh, okay. So they did arrive.
They did arrive
because you did put a little screenshot at the end of the order, and I guess they got lost for a second or something.
It was a whole thing. Yeah. So essentially, the way I started to structure the video, the best deals I knew were going to be on eBay. So I knew I had to go into it with a little bit of sort of flexibility because I couldn't just say I'm going to get X, Y, Z. I'm going to put a bid on this, and if I get it, then I'll save $20 here or there. So the whole thing was a little bit sort of flexible. So what I did was I started out with the iPhone. So I chose an iPhone XR. I got a clean XR with 128 gigs of storage, but it had a bad battery, which I didn't realize until I had opened it. So I was like,
that was actually really impressive, honestly. I mean, because the amount of storage at least helped a little bit. It's 64 based on the XR, right?
64 base, 128. I don't remember if they did 256, but yeah, it was a 128.
So at least 128. Yeah, it's barely squeakable right now.
Yeah. Which that was actually like not a huge problem. The big problem for me was when I was setting up the phone. I was transferring from a phone
that had so much storage. Yeah,
exactly. So it was I think I had to restart and reset the phone, reset Apple Pay like 3 different times before I finally got it to work.
Wow.
But the XR was fine. The problem with the XR was the battery. Yeah. And then the battery replacement was not fun because it's like,
I'm amazed you did it. I thought for sure you were going to cut and forward to 2 weeks and say, I brought it to the guy near the shop. Because I mean, even look, I my background's electronics and engineering. I've fixed a million things before. And even there's some stuff I'm just like, it's just faster and safer for someone else to do it.
Yeah.
So kudos for doing that on the video. That was amazing.
Thank you. We did the Apple self-service repair a year or two ago, where they send you like the giant
the machines.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like you do that, and it is the world's simplest thing. Like the thing's open in like 3 seconds, but you're out there with the hair gun, with like the heat gun, and you're trying to like open the sealant, and it's so stressful because with the battery, like they have those little pull tabs. And you're supposed to pull and twist and pull and twist. But the problem is that if that adhesive snaps, the adhesive is underneath the battery, you're cooked. There's like no way to get in. So I was just like stressful. Like at the end,
I was worried too.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? End of the day, battery's in there. It all works fine. No big deal.
So does it complain about the battery not being official once, or does it continue to complain about that forever?
It only complained to me once. So I know that some people say it pops up like maybe like when they restart their phone or whatever. But I only had it show up for me once. But I know they've changed that over the years because it used to be much more aggressive, and now I think they've kind of calmed down a little bit on like, hey, it's not. We can't tell it's authentic. Like,
how much did you pay for the phone ultimately?
So I paid, I believe, $140 for the phone,
and then $20 for the battery.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was a little more
steal.
Well, you say that. In hindsight, I could have spent a little bit more and got like a 12 mini. So if I would have found a 12 mini, I probably would have maybe spent another $30 or $40, which I think is worth it. But at the time, I was hoping I didn't have to pay that for that battery. So if I hadn't have grabbed that battery, and if I was able to live with it or it had decent life, I would have been in much better shape. But that was the thing with the video. I didn't know until I got the things in. So that was why we did that first unboxing with Luke. That was my first time seeing all the products to figure out, okay, what do I need to fix? What do I need to repair? What do I need to swap? Which is why I wanted to try to leave some sort of budget to work with. But it was a fun challenge.
I mean, I think what was really great about it is that because even though I agree with you, you could have probably bumped the price of the phone a little bit and gotten something better. But the XR is so much the same as a 16E today, like from, 7 years ago, whatever it was, 6 years ago. And I think that's a good match in a way, right? Because really that's kind of the successor, be a single camera, the basic entry model screen, right? And it's still supported, which is kind of, you squeaked right by there.
Yeah.
And actually I was really impressed, the pictures and videos you took with it. By the way, gorgeous 911 Targa you've got. I didn't know you had that.
Thank you.
Very nice as a car enthusiast myself. But yeah, so, that was one thing. And then you did the iPad 7th gen, right?
7th gen.
Base model. Yep. And I could believe, what was that, $65, $70?
I think I got it for $75. Yeah, it was actually, that was one of the things where I didn't realize until doing this video at how expensive old iPads are.
Well, because they hold their value. What do you do with it, right?
Yep, that's exactly it. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure I'll be able to find this for, $50 or whatever. And you can find some like really old iPads. But the problem is that once you get the really old iPads that aren't supported anymore, even like Netflix might not work on it.
Exactly. That defeats the whole point.
Exactly, yeah. So the iPad was fine. Honestly, I had no real issues with the iPad. I spent extra like $10 buying a little like sort of flimsy case for it, which that was a mistake. I wasted that money. It wouldn't even like hold the iPad up by itself. But the iPad was one of those areas where the only thing that was actually annoying is the fact that it has like basically the mono speaker. It has technically stereo speakers, but it's only on one side.
Yeah.
So like, oh man, it's been a while since I've heard an iPad that only I'm hearing in my right ear. But besides that, it was like totally fine. Like,
I mean, I was amazed you were able to upgrade that to the latest iPad OS, and it ran okay too. Like, I mean, it seemed to run better than the iPhone, actually.
That's exactly what I was about to say. To be fair, I think I asked a little bit more out of the iPhone and the iPad, like scrolling on Kindle or whatever. But yeah, no, it was a eye-opening experience. The same thing with the watch I have here. The watch. This was actually
still wearing it.
I'm not. I will say once the video is over, maybe the things went over to the side. But with the watch, it's actually, I didn't mention in the video, I even got the LTE version, which was the same price because I don't know how many people are still running that.
And that was how much?
This was like $67 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, battery's not great on it.
Of course.
Battery wasn't
but
great.
But 81% is still, kind for something that's that old.
Yeah.
For that you spend that little money on, like, it's a 5 series too, which is like actually usable, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
The only problem I had with it was battery. Like, and again, I would have had most of the same problems when it was new, right? Because this was, I think, kind of in the era where like battery life was a little slow, and importantly, like the charging is so slow on these things, right? So the newer Apple Watches charge, I don't know, twice as fast, whatever. So you can actually, take a shower, drop it on the charger for 30 minutes, and you're good to go. But with this, you drop it on for 30 minutes, it charges 25%. You go, okay, cool. I'll come back 30 minutes from now.
Yeah, I hear you. Did you ever replace the screws that closed the iPhone because they were missing? It's still held together. Okay.
Here's the thing, I don't know how much those screws do because the adhesive that like sort of glues the actual display down is quite strong. I don't know if I would want to go swimming in a pool with the 10R.
No. I mean, I don't think that phone is water. I think it's probably just IP67 at best.
That's a great question. I don't remember because actually, I daily drove the iPhone XR when it was new. I actually liked it more than the XS because the battery was so much better. I remember the XS generation, just the regular phone, at least the regular one, not the Pro Max. What did they even call it? Was it the
Plus?
The Plus. It was still the Plus back then, wasn't
Max
it?
Plus Pro.
Something like that, yeah. I just remember the regular size 10S was like the battery was terrible. So like, you know what? I'm just gonna use the 10R, like whatever. And I was so much happier because the phone lasted all day. And fun fact, out of all the somewhat things that have not held up well in the 10R, battery life, once I put a new battery in, totally fine. Like I didn't even have to think about it.
That's nice. Wow, that's impressive. And then you got through the Apple Watch, and then you got the Mac. So the Mac, I was really impressed. And I was surprised that you didn't actually try to get replacement keys, because even though the Butterfly is a little tricky to replace physically the keys, it's possible. You don't actually have to disassemble the Mac at all. Yeah. It's just you have to be very delicate because the mechanism is much more fragile than scissor keys. But I suppose if you're a touch typist, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because there were some key caps that were worn out, right? Basically, that's the only thing that was wrong with it, right?
Yeah. So when I first got it, it was really stinky. Like I definitely been
the smoke. Oh God, I hate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it did not smell good. But honestly, after opening it up, dusting it out, I was afraid it was going to kind of be sort of still lingering. But once I had sort of cleaned it out, it actually was totally fine. So yeah, the only real problem was exactly like you said, the keys. It was like the A, S, and D. It was just a couple of the keys that had like the paint kind of worn off. But
yeah.
I mean, to me,
no, that's fine.
Yeah, to be fair, I've actually never tried to replace those keycaps because I know that you're right. That mechanism is very, very sort of delicate. So I didn't really think about it too much. Maybe I could have swapped it, but for me, I was just like,
I just wondered if it crossed your mind at all.
It did not. No,
no, you're like, screw that. We're well into this video now. I'm just going with it. And then the battery was okay on the Mac, right?
It was, yeah. I don't remember the percentage, but it's like 120 cycles or something. It was like almost.
It had just been replaced, basically. It sounds like.
Yeah, wow, or just someone hadn't spent that much time with it. I don't know. That's interesting. I find a lot. So we don't buy like, no, actually, I'm lying. We buy a fair few like used Macs and used devices. And what I find is that sometimes, like, phones always get used. The batteries are always, like if it's a couple years old, you're getting 80 or maybe even less % battery. But for Macs, it's interesting. I think there's a substantial part of the audience out there who buys a Mac and maybe gets it for school or work, whatever, and doesn't use it that much and turns around and sell it, because there are a lot of Macs I find with very low cycle counts and clearly like hadn't been used that much. I mean, by the same token, there are also definitely like computers that I'll find with like 1,000 battery cycles and
that's
all beat up. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I think it's most people who, if you use your laptop for 2 or 3 years, you're going to just naturally have that. But it's interesting that there's a lot of Macs out there that you can't really tell when you're buying them unless someone has been incredibly thorough with their pictures and whatnot. But you'll find, actually, this is a pleasant surprise. This actually still has plenty of life left in it.
That's great. I thought this was such a great video. I mean,
thank you.
Such an interesting exercise too. Like you can actually join the Apple ecosystem with the latest stuff for a reasonable price. I mean, it's not sustainable long term because a lot of these devices are going to drop off the cliff in terms of support, right?
Yeah. But it's like I spent a total of $532 to get the 2019 MacBook Pros. That was the quad core versions, which had the touch bar and the 4 ports.
Yeah.
iPhone XR, iPad, Apple Watch. And the thing is, I had that extra money once I had sort of bought, and that's including like paying for the upgrades and stuff. I found a pair of AirPod Pros. So this didn't make in the video, but and mostly because the seller took like a week and a half to ship it. So I actually just got them. I actually posted the short this morning. I thought I got a good deal because I bought an original pair of AirPods Pro, so the first generation, for like $54 or something.
That's good.
But I got the box, it said second gen. So I got really excited. When I opened it up, and not only were they not second gens, they were in a second gen box, but they were first gen knockoffs. So they were actually fake AirPods. They didn't even have noise canceling. I was like,
did you think the seller didn't know? Because, there's some of them are so real, right?
Yep.
That I remember buying in Taiwan when I was there. The last Computex for me was in 2019 before COVID. And I remember I bought like a knockoff AirPods regular and you could not tell. Like they had lightning, they had the right color, everything, the right LED shade. Like I was like, that's why I bought them because I was like, this is insane.
Yep. It was exactly the same thing.
They were crap, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, they looked absolutely pristine. Sorry, let me take it back. They were dirty, but that was just because someone had used it. But as far as I could not tell a difference at all until I went to go pair them, and it immediately pops up saying, "Hey, these AirPods aren't genuine. Are you sure?" And then I'm like, "Okay, cool, whatever." Paired them, and then like the noise canceling wouldn't work. There's no transparency mode. I was like, "Oh
God,
okay, well." So that didn't make it in the video. It would have been funny. I think it would have been like a good 2 minutes of it. I realized I got scanned, but I just made it as a short. So,
but did you do a request for eBay to refund you and stuff? No, you didn't. It's like $50. Who cares?
Here's the thing. Yep. I have a policy that I buy a lot of things knowing that I'm the guinea pig. That if it's not real, it's not real. That's on me.
It's a business expense too at this point.
Exactly.
Right? Like I mean, when you do as much buying and I love the stuff you get. It's kind of amazing. What I love it, especially because like me, I think you have this thing where you love the cheap stuff. I have this, I want to democratize technology, right? And so I've always been very excited about affordable devices because even, or janky kind of knockoffs and stuff, because they're fascinating, right? They do suit a certain part of the market, otherwise it wouldn't exist. But at the same time, it's like some of it isn't bad at all, right? And this is a good example, $600. You could use this for a year or two. Say you're completely screwed with the economy right now. You lose your job, all your Apple devices die. $600, you can get back on board. Wow. To me, that's where I get so excited about this stuff. And so I'm wondering, how long did you take in terms of research? How long ahead did you have to plan to actually get this? Or did you say, we'll just make the video whenever we get all this stuff?
Yeah. So basically, we greenlit the idea, I don't know, a few weeks before we actually got started. The thing for me was, so I knew that we started working on it when the 16E was announced at $600. That's exactly when we started working on it. So I think I probably spent about 2 weeks sort of on eBay trying to find items. Because like I said, I had a list. So as I was doing some research, I was like, okay, I want, at least a 10R, maybe an 11 or ideally a 12, but probably not. Could I fit an M1? Probably not. So kind of what's the oldest sort of Intel Mac still supported? I basically had 2 or 3 options for each product, but that's what I started bidding. So there's a point in which I was bidding 3 phones at a time. Well, hopefully I get one of these. And it turned out that I did end up getting the 10R, but I was carefully juggling. Okay, if I get this one, I gotta have to cancel this one and back and forth. So it took a little bit of time to sort of put the whole thing together. But the nice thing was there are always options on eBay. And I did specifically only use eBay for this. I know some people are oh, why don't you use back market or whatever? But what I find is you get a better selection. Yes. And for my purposes, I was willing to gamble. So if I was going to save $20 and maybe get something that's a little bit sus, that was a perfectly reasonable trade-off. Which, to be fair, you buy on some of these refurbishing sites. They're not necessarily going to be guaranteed better quality anyway. Yeah. So, but it took a couple of weeks to actually track down all the items. Then I had hit up Luke, hey, do you want to come out? Because really, this video was, I saw the 16E. I'm like, $600. That's crazy. And I was thinking about the video he had done, where I think he had done $300 or something, where he had done the absolute bare bones, 15-year-old, whatever the case is, the oldest stuff. So I hit him up hey man, I'm going to totally steal your video. You want to come help me with it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
Of course. That's awesome. Great. Well, listen, I'll put the video in the show notes, the link to it. Folks, go check it out. And those of you watching on Patreon, we're about to give you a treat because we're going to show you some phones coming up. Speaking of affordable phones, you're a Pixel user like I am. I have a 9 Pro XL right now. And you know how good a Pixel can be, especially the A series. Every year, the A series is a hit ever since the first one. And the prices are still very decent considering especially what's happening right now with tariffs and stuff. Let's see if that stays. But right now, today, the Pixel 9a is out. I'm holding it up here. This is the white one, thankfully. I had a black one for the first day or two, and they recalled it because apparently there's some defective part, and they sent me this white one. The black one, honestly, do not buy it because here's my takeaway. This is very bland of a design because it's very iPhone-like. It's got slap sides now and the rounded corners, and it's lost the visor. So as you can see, it's perfectly flat. It doesn't have the beautiful camera bar that really is iconic, especially on the 9 series now. I think they really nailed that design. So they got rid of it. Of course, it's Google. They're going to shoot themselves in the foot any chance they get, right? But that being said, you know, if you can live with its camera pill, I think on the black one, it blends in. It really makes the phone look really terrible. The other thing I want to show you is check out the bezels if you can see it on the video right there. Like those are chunky ass bezels. And you know, at least it's even. Like last year's 8A had thinner bezels, but the bottom had that chin, which was kind of a god awful. Yeah. So imagine the black one with that. Now it makes the bezel look even thicker, right? Because you don't have that silver rim around it. Yeah. So that's my only thing with this phone. It's very generic in design. Get it in a light color, but this is not about the design. It's about the value and the fact that everything almost in this phone has been updated since last year. It's actually surprising. The only things that remain from last year are the ultra-wide camera, the front-facing camera, the wireless charging specs, which is just 7.5 watt, the fact that it's a plastic bag, but it's all matte, as you can see, like everything, it's metal frame, but everything is matte. So no fingerprints, nothing, nice. The other thing that's remained is, unlike last year, or the 9 series in general, that has a new modem alongside the G4. This has the G4, but it has the old modem, the 9300. That means no satellite connectivity. So that's it. Everything else, the display is the same display as the 9, just with chunky bezels of doom. I don't know why it's so bezel-tastic. Look at this thing. It's insane. Anyway, so other than the bezels, the display is exactly the same, which is amazing because in the past, the 8A series, like 7, 8, etc., they always had a slightly lesser display. So 2700 nits, you know, 1080p, the whole 120 hertz. And then a bigger battery, 5100 milliamp hour. That thing goes for 2 days, no problem. And then you got the 48 megapixel camera from the 9 Pro Fold. So not the better, bigger sensor from the 9 series, but the 9 Pro Fold one. So that's basically everything is new. And charging speeds, I mean, you're going to laugh at this, are faster, 23 watts instead of 18.
Oh, let's go.
I know. But look, $499.
Yeah.
8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs or 256. I mean, that's amazing. Like this is exactly what the 16E should have been.
Yes.
You know, and I said that in my 16E review, like, I love the phone. I love the design. Aesthetically, it's beautiful. It's great. It's very iPhone. It's probably the best looking of all the iPhones right now, in my opinion. Yeah. Because, you know, I find the camera pods are too ornamental on the current iPhone line. We're going to talk about camera pods on iPhones in a second. But I think the thing here is, if the iPhone 16e, I can kind of live without the ultra wide because I understand Apple's kind of really wanting to have like 1 camera, 2 cameras, 3 cameras on the lineup. But the lack of magnets for the MagSafe, and the 600, are you kidding me? Yeah, $600. Like, I understand that you can't make it $429 like the SE was. I get that, especially today. But on this phone, like, they did it. You know, Google didn't mess about. They did it right. So I'm very happy with this. My review is up on Hot Hardware. I'll put it up. What are your thoughts in general about this 9A from what you've read and seen so far?
Yeah. I mean, well, especially from hearing sort of your first impressions, I mean, it seems solid. So for context, I've actually since late last year, I've been using the regular Pixel 9. So not the Pro, the regular, the green 9, which I would show you if I was not using it to record
You're recording right now.
3 inches below with me. I've been so happy with this phone. So I actually wasn't planning on switching to the Pixel 9 this year. I actually have not daily drove. I've been daily driving Z Flips since day one. Yeah,
you were like Samsung this whole time.
Yeah. And so the Pixel 9, when I got it, I had it, I was doing a video on it. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's pretty good. But then I kept coming back to it. And this is the point where I was like, I don't know, I'm sure you're like this, where like, you'll be really amped about a device. And then one day something clicks in your brain, you go, I don't know, it's just not, I'm not feeling it anymore. And it was
done.
Like, exactly. Like I had just been using Z Flip for so long. I was like, you know what? I want something different. Let me actually spend some time with the Pixel 9. Originally, it was going to be for a little while. I'm like, I'll just use it for a bit. And I'll move to S25 or try something else. But I just keep using it. Maybe when S25 Edge eventually shows up, maybe that will be the thing that kind of pulls me away. But I've been incredibly happy with the 9. And the fact that you're getting almost all of the same features, a very, very similar experience, for what is it, $150 less?
Yeah, the best you can get right now on sale is a Pixel 9 for $650, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same amount of storage. So, like, I don't know. I think regular price is $799. So
I think so, yeah. Which, I mean, it is always a little hard to judge some of the Pixel pricing because you're right. The Pixel 9, I got it on sale like 2 months after it came out for $650, right? So it
nice.
It the MSRPs don't tend to stick around for too long. I think the A series usually doesn't get quite the same kind of deep discount.
Of course, there are probably thinner margins on that anyway.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, even so, what you're getting here is it might not be like a huge headline, like wow, insane, crazy deal, like the old like OnePlus days or whatever. But what you're getting here is a phone that will do basically everything you need it to do without major compromises. For a reasonable price. You're getting the years and years and years of software updates. You're getting, well, yes, like you said, it might not have the latest modem. You may not have, I mean, Tensor's not going to blow
but it's fine. You've lived with it, right? Like it's not great, but it's perfectly serviceable. And I think the other thing is you point out the software updates, but more importantly, you get them first. And you get them without any crud from the manufacturer or from the carriers. You're getting it's like an iPhone. You're getting exactly what Google wants you to get, right?
Absolutely. And it's just a good general experience. Like I think that's like the bottom line, right? I think that for so many years, I feel like the Pixel line has almost kind of underperformed what it should have been.
Yeah.
But I feel like the last year or two, especially with the Pixel 9, there's not really any obvious things you can point to. Yes, you're right. There are certainly little things you can point to, but like performance is fine. Everything else works well. Like the cameras, the photos, like everything about these things are so solid. And Google are still aggressively pricing this, especially when you consider sales, right? Like they're a little bit cheaper
right now. Like, I mean, I don't know if they can maintain this price right now. I'm hoping, I'm really keeping my fingers crossed, and I want everyone right now that's listening to cross their fingers really hard because, like, I'm not sure honestly, this phone is so good they could easily charge like $25-$30 more for it and get away with it right now.
Yeah, but they're doing the right thing, right? I think the Google, for all the stuff we give them for killing products too early and yada yada, it's clear that they see real value in Pixel. They see real value in hardware. They've made the long-term commitments and they continue to invest. So I would be very curious to see what the actual profit margins on Pixels are. I can't imagine it's all that particularly impressive. But I'm glad that they've stuck with it and it's taken them 9 generations. But we're really in a spot where it's really easy to recommend a Pixel just full stop. It's not like,
you have an entire lineup. It's like Apple. It's like Samsung. You don't just have that one phone. Like OnePlus, awesome, right? Oppo is great, right? We're going to talk about them in a second. But it's like Chinese phones. I got tons of them. I love them, but they're not really attainable to the average person walking into an AT&T store or Verizon or T-Mobile. This phone is sold by all 3 carriers.
Yeah.
And it's sold for Google Fi. Right now, there's deals where you can get one for free with a new line. Stuff. You don't get any of that with OnePlus because they're not sold by carriers. They only have 2 if you count the 13R model. And Open is getting old, so fair. But at least look, Pixel has an entire lineup, right? 9A, 9 Pro, 9 Pro XL, and 9 Pro Fold. That's incredible because in the US we have zero choice. Like, think about it. You could get a Moto Razr, you could get a Moto Edge, which is a mid-range phone. You get a Moto G if you're on a budget, on a prepaid. But then honestly, I'd say buy this instead because it's way, way better. But nobody has a lineup like this. This is the thing that kind of people, I think, forget. It's like, I know that, you and I and my audience is super tech savvy and early adopters. They import phones and stuff. But the average consumer can access all of these phones from Google. And even though the Tensor G4 sucks, and I know I'm preaching to the choir and I'm a bit of a Stockholm syndrome because, my abuser treat me well. My Pixel Tensor is crap, but I love the software kind of thing.
Yeah.
But look, I really think that we have to give Google credit because I don't think they make any money overall on this. Like, there's no way. Like, think of the development cost of making the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, right? Like, it's almost as good as a OnePlus Open, and it's their second phone. Like, they must have spent so much R&D money on this. You can't copy somebody else. You have to create it from scratch, essentially, right? So, I don't know. I'm impressed with Google that they managed to stick around and grow actually this lineup. So
it's in a good spot. I like the fact that it's hard to pick a bad Pixel right now.
Yeah.
Like you could pretty much look at any of the Pixel line. I would say maybe like the XL, but even then, like you could pretty confidently look at all of the Pixels right now and say, hey, look, these are solid phones, reasonable prices, no real major downsides. A lot of the reliability issues have kind of been sorted out compared to, like Pixel 6,
G4
Pixel 7.
doesn't burn a hole in your hand anymore like it used to with G3 and the previous ones. Yeah, I know. It's good.
Solid.
And one last thing on the 9A that's kind of cool. They also updated the water resistance from IP67 to 68. So now you can bathe with it.
What I do all the time.
We do this all the time. Netflix and chill in the bathtub. But look, I think, again, great stuff. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of related to Apple and Google. We got a bunch of quick news items I want to fire off here. We talked about the iPhone camera bumps, and speaking of the lack of visor on this, it looks like Apple's going to change things. There's some cases now that have popped up, and it's not the first time we've seen this, but it looks like the 17 Pro series is kind of reminds me of Poco phone a little bit. Big rectangle at the top. What are your thoughts on that? I think they need a new design language, but is this the right direction?
I always like to sort of reserve judgment until we see the actual full announcement, right? Because you'll see the cases, you'll see the mock-ups, you'll see even I know Lou from Unbox Therapy did a video I think yesterday where he unboxed a couple of the models that looked fairly decent, and none of them look good. To be fair, you're right. I think most people can agree that the existing iPhone with the weird sort of triple camera bump on the back is not exactly a beautiful look. It's been around since the 11 Pro or something.
I think you're right.
And, I think we've over time grown to just get used to it. But I don't think anyone can look at it and go, oh my God, what a beautiful device. Like when you look at the 16E, the single camera, it looks so clean. It looks so sleek.
So nice.
Yeah. And so if we're taking what has already been a big triple camera bump and then we're extending it to be this weird visor thing, I'm always hopeful that maybe they should do something with the rest of that sort of space where it's not just a finish. Like maybe they stick something there or whatever. But the thing is, I right now, I will be very surprised if when they announce this thing, it doesn't look ugly. It just to me, especially because have you seen what's that two-tone thing? Like the actual bottom.
I don't get it. I think maybe they're targeting China in terms of design, different tastes over there. I think that, for us, at least in the West right now here, and especially in North America where our choices are very limited, I think Pixel nailed the design best.
Yeah.
They kind of inspired themselves by Apple with the slab sides and the rounded corners. Yeah, it's a little copycatish, but I've grown to love it. But the visor as it is on the 9 series, other than the 9A, is beautiful. I think it really defines the design language for the phone. Samsung is less offensive than Apple, but it's also more bland. So, give and take. I really do think we need some change on the Apple front. So maybe initially when we saw the Pixel 9, we were like, not sure about this change because, it no longer wraps around the edges.
Yeah.
But then we saw it and it was just like, oh yeah, right.
Mhm.
And I think maybe the iPhone will be like that finally. Maybe that two-tone thing will work, unless it's a black phone, which
I hope so. That's the thing. It's always hard to look at like these very early looks at things. Like you'll
Yeah.
get an idea of the physical dimensions, but what are the actual materials? How do they sort of interact? Are they really gonna be different? Is it gonna be two-tone? Is it gonna be some completely like it's always hard to know. So like right now, I'm not encouraged, but also I'm gonna keep an open mind until Timmy Cook pulls it out and we go, okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of pixels as well, we have leaks on 10 series pricing. And it looks like for especially the Fold is going to be pretty much identical, maybe a new chip, which
Yeah.
makes sense because it's pretty solid. And, they probably spent a lot of money creating the
Yes.
second generation, which is really great. So, what we're looking at is wow. It says that this article on GSM Marine, I'll put it in the show notes, says the Pixel 8 handsets will continue to start at $499 through the Pixel 12A and 28. I don't know how they can do that with the current economy.
No way. Well, also, I understand that, like, I don't know where this sort of information was sort of sourced from. I understand.
It's a rumor at this
Exactly.
point.
It's like, I could believe that that's like their goal is like, hey, like this is where we're going to kind of like develop to. I find it hard to believe that anyone with any serious degree of confidence can tell me what the 2028 Pixel A12 or whatever version we are on, what that price is actually going to be. I feel like that feels like it's great to have a goal. I would not bet on that goal. That's just what they're developing. Like, okay, we think it'll be around this price, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah, also, I know that the Pixel team leaks a lot, but come on, are we really leaking Pixel 12A right now?
I agree. That's insane. But the news here says, this is not news. The rumor says that we're going to have a price drop on the Fold because it's just a processor upgrade, basically. So should be about, $1,600, which is $200 less than current. Although currently there's sales always.
Yes.
But the other thing to consider is $100 more for the 10 and 10 Pro XL. No mention of the 10 Pro. That seems likely to me simply because of the economy. And I wouldn't be surprised if the iPhones go up in price this year and the S series or even the Z series go up in price a little bit this year too. Last year they went up in price, the Z Fold and Z Flip.
$100.
So, I don't know. I think this pricing stuff right now, if you're playing with prices or claiming pricing, you are digging yourself a big hole because things are very volatile. And so I would say right now, if you're really needing a phone, go get it now. Doesn't matter which phone you're looking at. You can buy it now because you're going to be set for at least 3-4 years, shorter if you're, a listener. But my point is, I would stock up a little bit because the uncertainty is, a big problem, and it's only can go up from here. So yeah,
I agree.
sadly.
And if I was, if I took off my tech reviewer hat and put on my company man hat, I would launch every product over the next year at like $100 more than I was initially expecting. You've got to price that uncertainty in because it's so much easier to launch a product at $100, at $899 instead of $799 now, and then just you can always put it on sale all you want. It is a very different thing when you launch that product, like maybe the Switch 2, and then have to go, oh, hey, JK, we're going to add a little to the price. Whoopsie. Like, you got to start high. You can always discount. It is so much harder to raise the price. Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Also, we mentioned it when we talked about the 9A here, the Gemini Live Visual AI feature. So this is actually very cool. It's coming to all Pixel 9s. It's baked into the 9A at launch, and it's coming to all S25 devices. So, basically, Gemini Live right now, you can hold the thing and talk to it. Imagine now that you can tell it to look at your screen, but real time, like video, like screen capture. You have a bunch of permissions you can set for that. And then the other option is to look at your cameras in real time. So of course, there are lots of privacy issues here, right? Like we already freak out a little bit when people take photos in certain places. Like, I have a pool here in my building, it's shared, and people don't take photos generally with their phones, but they're holding their phones in the hot tub, and you don't know, are they taking, what are they doing? So now I'm like, if you're using Gemini Live right there with earbuds or something, oh God, like the technology is incredible. So what I did yesterday is I walked around my house here, my place, and I just asked it to describe stuff, and then asked him a question about it. I'm like, there's a big park here in Vancouver called Stanley Park. It's like bigger than Central Park in New York, and it's very close to my place. And so I was like, we have a poster of it on the wall, and I said, what is this? And then explain to me like the history of it, and like being able to like this is going to be incredible for people with disabilities, and especially visually impaired people, because you can literally ask it to describe everything and it just keeps going. And it only got one thing wrong. It thought my soda stream in my kitchen was a coffee maker, but everything else, like it described accurately. It described that I had a Magic Mouse and an iMac on my desk.
Oh, wow.
Like it described the color of it. It described like, I have a bunch of pill boxes for my medications. It described that they were pill boxes. I don't think it could get close enough to read the labels, but it's really interesting that it got most of it right. And a little scary too, because look, I'm pretty sure I didn't read the terms of service. It's not my thing because I'm an early adopter. I have to try the stuff out anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that Google's getting all this data to teach its AI, right? So you're giving away a lot of your personal life. In fact, I went in afterwards and deleted that data from Gemini just because it's a little creepy to think what they're doing with that data. The actual tech is not, I don't think is creepy, and I think is really impressive. But yeah, that's the thing. So what are your thoughts on this?
It's really impressive. So I went to I/O last year where I think they had shown off, I think they called it Project Astra at the time. And I've actually been able to talk with some of the engineers from Gemini as they've sort of been developing this. And I've been able to test some versions of it over the last few months. And it's been really interesting to see not only as it evolved, because like the technology is really impressive, because essentially what they're doing is they're sort of, it's not like an actual live feed. Like I think what they're doing is they're like taking an image every so many frames and then trying to compute, like basically they're trying to do this in the most economical way possible. Because if you were actually streaming 4K 30 FPS directly to the server, it'd light on fire, right? But what's cool about it is, you're right, it works already to such a really high degree on your phone. As you assume this lands on other sort of devices, so whether it be some glasses or a headset or, whatever the case is, like you can really see that sort of use case coming up. I was actually last week, I was in Seattle for the Microsoft 50th anniversary.
Right, yeah.
And they showed off Copilot Vision, which I will say I didn't actually get to touch it, but someone like kind of walked me through a demo. It was very similar to what we're getting with Gemini Live. The same thing where, you move the phone around, tell me what this is, tell me a story about the items you see, like all that kind of stuff. And it works really quite well. So we're definitely in an era where AI is vastly outrunning the text box, the field. It's actually really being able to integrate itself into your life in a much more meaningful way. I think it's going to be different for everybody. I don't want to speak for like what everyone's individual comfort level for each of these tools is. But what I can say is I'm very happy that these things exist.
Me too.
Exactly right. You can imagine if you were visually impaired. Oh my God. Just this would be this is such an incredible tool that you can use.
Like I give you an example, right? Like right now you're in Taipei, right? You're talking to taxi driver. You need to use Google Translate. It's a bit cumbersome. You are going to the corner store and you're looking at a can and you're Google translating it visually. That's all great. Imagine now you just got Gemini Live running with your Pixel Buds or whatever preferred earbuds, and you just talk.
Yeah.
And it just does the stuff. Like you can say, hold the can and say, tell me what's in here. And it does the translating, and it actually tells you. You don't have to there's no middleman anymore. And part of me is like, wow, but part of me is like, I'm too old for this. Like I feel like, get off my lawn, kids. Like seriously, like I'm having a moment where I'm like, wow, like this is happening. Like, ChatGPT, generative AI in general, it's kind of fun to play with and, generate like these images and like do the things like, refresh and revise my headlines for my stories by iterating with ChatGPT and Gemini. Suggest an email to customer service because, you have a certain style for that, and I'm terrible because I just yell at people because I'm, but, oh, that's great. But when I'm starting to see things where an agent is on your computer doing things for you
Yeah.
intelligently, without being destructive, without it's not generative so much. It's more like task rabbiting your life, your tech life. And that is the stuff we need, right?
Yeah. And
There's this thing, I can't talk about it yet, but this thing I've seen that runs on the Mac right now that you can basically tell it to operate on your files, and you can tell it to do stuff that you don't even have apps installed for. It will go in the background, create an app using ChatGPT that solves the problem you're giving it, and then apply it to your files. It's non-destructive. It just it only has read-only access to your stuff. But then it so for example, like you have a bunch of receipts and you have a Excel form, you want to put all the data from the receipts. The receipts are photos, PDFs, random stuff. You just tell it to, and it'll do it. And you don't have to install anything on your Mac. Like it'll spin off a virtual machine in the background.
Yeah.
Create code for itself what it needs to fix using open source stuff from GitHub, and then actually create the stuff and then run it and then execute the task. And it does it in seconds. And you're like, this is where I want people to get off my lawn, Austin.
Yeah.
Like I worked as a software engineer. I wrote code. This stuff is happening in microseconds in the background, stuff that would have taken me hours to do 20 years ago when I was still in video games. Unbelievable.
It is. And it's funny to think about, everyone's approaching it from different perspectives too. I've seen there's certainly some versions that, you're right. It will be either in a virtual machine. I know that some companies are actually shipping stuff that will just take over your mouse cursor. There are browsers that kind of build this in. Again, at the Microsoft event when they were showing some of the Copilot stuff, they are using a virtual machine in the cloud. So basically you could be in the browser, say, hey, I want to order flowers. It spins up a virtual machine, opens the browser, starts navigating, and basically you're watching it do everything inside your browser. And at certain points, it will prompt you to say, hey, do you want the dozen roses or the 2 dozen? What do you want the space? Whatever the case is. The way they're doing it, I think, is very safe because it doesn't save any information. Like you have to put your credit card in every single time. You have to give it all the information every single time. A little bit on the slow side. But you can imagine, especially once that's paired with more voice features, when that's running on your phone, when you pull out your phone and go, hey, order me some flowers. It spins up a virtual machine in the cloud, opens a web browser, goes to do the thing. It chimes in, okay, hey, it's $35. You okay with that? Yeah, sure, ship it. And then you're done.
But
right?
our phones are powerful enough now. You could spin that virtual machine on the phone and keep all that data locally and only go to the cloud for the weather info, the shopper info.
Yeah.
Like that's even better. And I think that's kind of where we're going.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the Chinese news really rapidly here. We've got the Find X Ultra out. I'm sorry, folks. I just got the box this morning. For those of you watching on Patreon, I'm holding the box for the Oppo Find X8 Ultra. This is their top-of-line camera phone. I'm just going to not unbox it because I don't want to. I need to rebox it. So here, there's a divider. And I think inside of here is a case and some documents. There is the phone, which I can't show you because it's in the thing, but look at this camera pod. Let me see if I can hold this up for you guys.
I like how you say you're not going to unbox it and you proceed to completely unbox it.
No, I'm not. I can't, anything that's destructive, I can't do. So I can't remove this wrapper, and I'm not going to remove that IMEI sticker, but check out this camera pod. You can see how crazy it is.
Huge.
And also it's got this kind of pearlescent white color, which is cool. And then let's see, I'm going to show you what's inside here of the box. There is a charger and a cable and a SIM tool. And this is an 100-watt charger. I believe this is a 100-watt phone. Anyway, expect more next week on the show about this phone because I want to play with it a little bit. This is not sold anywhere else. I'll link to a story from GSM Arena that talks about the specs and everything, alongside the X8S series, which ships with the MediaTek Dimensity 9400 Plus, which was also announced today. This is an updated version of the 9400. The Ultra that I just showed you is 8 Elite, so it's Qualcomm, but the other ones are all 9400 Plus. Now, the 8S series, the X8S, is basically a mini phone like that OnePlus 13T that's been rumored, 6.3-inch display, and then it's got also an X8S Plus, which is kind of interesting because it's the exact same chassis as the X8 Non-Pro that came out in the fall, but with a 9400 Plus upgraded in there. That's it. So those are basically the phones. In terms of the The Ultra, it's basically like everything we had on the Ultra last year, but they've gone to a thinner chassis, a bigger battery, and it's silicon carbon, so 6100 milliamp hour. You got a new 8 Elite in there, of course, and then you have this crazy camera system, which, you know, based on the X8 Pro that I used, which so far my favorite camera phone that I've had my hands on. Sadly, Xiaomi did not send me the 15 Ultra, so I don't have that to compare. But what are your thoughts on these Chinese phones?
It is crazy at how I think in the West it's really easy to, because, you know, if you don't see the phone in stores, you don't see people walking around with them, it's easy to kind of lose track of how unbelievably fast the progress is.
Yeah.
You think about the battery tech. I mean, the battery tech alone is like making huge strides. You look at the cameras, which have made huge strides as well. You look at just the variety of hardware that you have. I mean, you look at the different flipping and folding options. You look at every size. I mean, to me, it's one of those things where it really shows what competition will do, and also what it shows what the lack of competition won't give you.
Exactly. For us here in the West or even in the US.
Exactly. When you see Apple doing their own thing year after year in no particular rush to launch anything until they're ready for it. When you look at Samsung, who are cruising and doing their thing and they're taking it one step at a time, and you see the Chinese manufacturers who are fighting just absolutely ruthlessly with each other to get every scrap of market share at every price. Like, the phones are just, honestly, they're incredibly fast. They're incredibly quick. They're like, the iteration and the evolution is so rapid.
100%. Like, Oppo has the Reno series and Vivo has the V series. And again, these are ex-BBK group companies. BBK has been disbanded as a parent company, but they're still very close in their relationships. Both of these phones come out literally with a new version every 4 months. 4 months.
Yep.
Like imagine a Pixel A coming out every 4 months.
Yeah.
Like how do you improve? What do you change? What? It's crazy.
It's wild. It really is wild.
Speaking of which, there's a few new items here that are like related. So, you know, Oppo has its 8 Ultra and X8S series now, but the OnePlus 13T display has been teased. This is the probably China only 6.3-inch mini flagship, right? Better than a 13R, but less good than a 13, but much smaller. And you look at that display, you look at the bezels, and it's identical to the X8S, which is the 6.3-inch Oppo, which is also identical to the Vivo X200S, which is also their mini phone. And then there's the Vivo X200 Ultra that's coming soon. And, you know, we've been talking about that on the show for a few weeks now. That's now coming, I think, later this month. Like, I want to say April 21st or something like that. But here's the thing about it. They're making a camera kit. Remember the Xiaomi 14 Ultra and 15 Ultra? Actually, even the 13 Ultra, they all had a camera kit, which basically like adds a grip with a battery in it, and a case that you can mount some standard filters on, you know, like camera filters. Yeah. So that's really cool because so far Xiaomi was the only one doing that. I'm wondering if Oppo will do that eventually with the Ultra that I have here that, you know, I just unboxed. Because right now there's nothing being announced for that. Have you ever used any of these crazy camera phones and grips to go alongside them? And what's your experience been, if at all?
No, so I've never used any of the first-party grips. I've certainly tried some of the third-party grips that, you know, companies will make, but no, I've never used any of the ones, especially with the ones that have like batteries and whatnot installed, and certainly filter threads. That's one of the things that, oh man, I know that. I think who is it? Someone's selling right now, and maybe it's a Moment. I think they're making a universal kit where you can drop. I think it's mostly for iPhone right now, but you can like do like magnetic, like ND filters and whatnot, which would be so helpful. But the fact that the first-party companies are making this, again, comes back to what we were saying earlier. There's so much competition here. Everyone's trying to find every possible little inch of like, oh, hey, we haven't done this. We haven't done this. It's like, where's Samsung? Where's my filter kit for my S25 in log, right? Like, it's like, I just think that everyone's playing in different worlds and there's not enough like true competition. Like I think back to, again, I'm sorry to bring back Samsung here, but I think back to last year with the S24 launch. Right. I remember I was in the room and they were kind of talking about it. And people were like asking, like, oh, well, are you going to bring log? And they're like, log? Oh, wait, from the iPhone? Yeah, I don't know, maybe. And then for S25, I remember having a conversation with someone at Samsung and go, hey, you know what? We heard everyone asking for log, so we brought it in. I'm like, cool, that's great. What about all the other things? You go, oh, well, we got Galaxy Log. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. Look, with all due respect, I know that reviewers were here to try to like, critique or try to give you feedback and stuff. If it takes someone in a room for a briefing to say, hey, what about this feature? Should you do this feature? And that's the first time you think about it. Maybe you should be looking at the competition a little bit more closely because they've been on that game for a whole lot longer than a handful of YouTubers in the room saying, do you have log perchance?
Yeah. But that's the mindset of, the Chinese market. It's the same with EVs, right? Like, it's like there is so much competition that, like here we're just so isolated and it's going to get worse with this economy. So I'm like, that's why I'm like, say, go buy a Pixel because you're going to be happy for a while at least. You know?
Yeah.
I'll put a few news items related to that Vivo X200 stuff and the OnePlus 13T. We also have a bunch of teasers related to these products. Like, as I said, display for the 13T and a video trailer for the 200S, which is the Vivo small phone. And then CMF is, nothing's budget brand is coming out with a Phone 2 Pro, and we've mentioned that last week, but now we have a teaser for that. So again, check that out. I'm very excited about the CMF Phone 2 Pro because last year's Phone 1 for $299 was incredibly good. And unfortunately, this is probably going to be India only right now. So I think they're narrowing down their market to CMF being India only. So it's harder for us to get them this year. I've requested one and PR said, she was like, I don't know if we can even get you one this year. And I know she means it because, we're pretty tight. So it's like last year she got me one, but it was like a month later or something, So stay tuned for that one because supposedly they're going to add a telephoto, which I'm like, what? Like, how can you do this without messing it up? Like, but they did it with the Phone 3A, right?
They did, I was about to say, yeah. So, exactly.
So let's see how they can bring it down to like $299, $329. I don't know, something like that. But the other thing I want to kind of get your thoughts on is this Red Magic 10 Air. Does that mean Red Magic's going to make a thin gaming phone? And if they are, what are the thermals going to be like?
That's an excellent question. So we actually just took a look at, I feel like a few weeks ago, at the 10 Pro. So the standard non-Air variant. And, it's interesting what they're doing because, you think about Red Magic, you think gaming. Right? Obviously, that's kind of like the main shtick. And quite good pricing too when you consider, you're getting like 8 Elite, you're getting the giant 7,000 milliamp hour battery, all this kind of stuff. For the Air, I can see them taking a couple different approaches because if you look at the Pro, it's chunky.
It's beautiful, but chunky.
I don't think it would take a great stroke of imagination to slim it slightly, round some corners. You could make a slightly smaller version that would probably not massively sacrifice performance and battery life and whatnot and call it an Air.
Especially with silicon carbon batteries, right?
Exactly.
And you remove the fan because even though the fan off the 10 Pro actually holds up really well on sustained benchmarks. So you might not need the fan. And ROG phone does not have a fan. It's external if you want it. So maybe that's the angle they're taking with this.
I think that makes sense, right? They could slim it down. They could maybe even just include a fan in the box if they really want to. Like that would be like a simple way of doing it. But my thought is that while they have done relatively well so far, they're probably starting to get enough feedback. Like, hey, you know what? We should make one of these that fits in a pocket and people want to carry. Because I don't know about you, I'm a small phone guy. I don't want to have the giant.
I like the bigger phones, but not that big.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, come on, man. Let's take this down a notch, okay?
Like that's a little much. But yeah, we'll find out. This could be a China-only thing too. And related to that, Honor is coming out with a new line of mid-range phones called the Power Series. But the only reason I brought that in there is because holy crap, the battery is supposed to be close to 8,000 milliamp hours.
Ooh,
like
dang.
What? Like on a
go.
phone that's a reasonable size, again, silicon carbon batteries. Honors was one of the first to implement that. So I'm not surprised. But, remember when Energizer did that 10,000 milliamp hour phone a few years back at MWC and it was like an inch thick?
Yes.
We're now to the point where you can get a phone down to about 8 millimeters or 7.5 millimeters with, 7,000 milliamp hour. It's supposed to be a little more than 7,000, but no more than 8. But that's like insane numbers. That's like 3-day battery life, right? So
yeah. It's crazy because I think for so long we've been so used to most like no one would question if the next Snapdragon processor is 30% faster. If someone brought out a 30% bigger battery next year, that would be unbelievable. So I think for so long we've just been accustomed to it's going to get 1% better a year or whatever. But now we're starting to see 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, maybe 8,000 milliamp hour batteries being a selling point, but not like a huge sacrifice to get to.
Right.
And it's nice to see, like, I feel like we're seeing more jumps in battery over the last 2 or 3 years with silicon than we have for the 10 years before that, right? So it's like, oh man, we're just getting even more reasons. Throw your old phone in the e-waste bin and go pick yourself up a brand new Red Magic or whatever you want to get. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the year of thin phones with big batteries.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's exciting because we need a bit of change. Things have been really boring. Again, we talked about the camera pods on the iPhone. Ugh. So yeah, let's see what happens, folks. Austin, we should wrap up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet? I mean, besides your YouTube channel and maybe all your social media handles and all that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's moderately difficult to find me. You can look up Austin Evans most places. Austin.Duncan on Instagram and Threads. That's mostly where I hang out these days.
Folks, please subscribe to Austin's YouTube channel, one of the best out there. And again, follow him on social and all that stuff and chat with us on social about this podcast. You know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, that's TNKGRL, like the comic book character, just drop the vowels. It's the same on all the social platforms. I'm mostly on Blue Sky, on Threads, on Instagram. There is a link for the podcast, mobiletechpodcast.com. Very simple. You can, of course, subscribe to it on every platform you can think of. So, we're on everything, Spotify, Apple, YouTube Music, all that. If your app lets you rate or review the show, please do that and subscribe and tell your friends. And then there's a YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast with like monthly or so, the occasional video, maybe an unboxing, maybe a hands-on, maybe an interview, maybe a car thing. Who knows? It's tech, it's cars, it's fun. Check it out, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how it works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment. And then you also have the Patreon, patreon.com/Tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. The big perk there is very simple. $5 a month buys you a video version of the podcast every week, and you get it a day in advance. That's the shtick. Very simple. So you can listen to the podcast by having the image in the background in advance before everybody else gets it, or you can watch and see some unboxings, pseudo unboxings, and some new phones in our hands and our grimaces and jokes. And I leave some stuff sometimes in there, like when the FedEx guy shows up, and so there's bloopers and things. So check it out. Support me if you can. I'd appreciate it. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Magna. Magna is more than one of the world's largest suppliers in the automotive space. They are a mobility technology company built to innovate with a global entrepreneurial-minded team of over 170,000 employees across 341 manufacturing operations and 106 product development, engineering, and sales centers spanning 28 countries. With 65 plus years of expertise, Magna's ecosystem of interconnected products combined with their complete vehicle expertise uniquely positions them to advance mobility in an expanded transportation landscape. And Austin, thanks so much for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll have Austin on again in the future, folks, and stay tuned. We'll have a show next week. Until then, cheers, everybody.